6th grade. This is Mrs. Froman, and you're going to take notes today on Environmental Science Notes, Chapter 3, Section 2, and this is on forests and fisheries. So first we're going to talk about the forests. Forests are a very important source of products for us. Maple syrup, if you want that syrup on your pancakes in the morning, rubber, nuts, paper, lumber. Other things that forests do for us are they absorb carbon dioxide and pollutants from the air, and they of course release that oxygen so we can breathe. And their roots actually help prevent flooding and soil erosion, so that's soaking up all that water and keeping the soil in place so it's not washing down into the rivers and streams. U.S. forests, about one-third of U.S. forests, one-third of the U.S. is covered with forests, so that's a pretty good amount. Forest industries provide jobs for 1.5 million people. And as you know, trees are a renewable resource. Since we can plant the new trees after we cut them down to use them for lumber and paper, it'll take a few years to get them to full-size trees that we can use again, but if we keep doing that, it's a renewable resource. There are several different logging methods. Clear cutting is when they cut down all the trees in one area. And you can see this is a view from an airplane window, and they just cut down everything as they went. This is quicker and safer and cheaper. It's a lot easier to just go and cut everything in front of you. The problem with this is it does leave that soil exposed, and that can lead to soil erosion, and that soil can wash into those streams and lakes and rivers and cause harm to those ecosystems. Then there's something called selective cutting. And this is where they cut down some trees, but they leave a mix of tree sizes and species. So it's good for the habitat, but it is harder for the loggers because they have to move their big equipment in between the trees that they're leaving, and they have to drag those logs out, zigzagging in between the trees that are left. But it is less damaging to the forest environment. So you can see there's a lot of stumps in this picture here, but a lot of the trees are left standing, so there's still a habitat. In forest management, they have something called sustainable yield, and that means that a regular amount of trees can be harvested without reducing the future supply because they're planting new trees all the time. So if they cut down 500 acres of trees, then they have to plant 500 acres of trees that same year. So it really depends on the growth rate of the trees. It works best if they do it in smaller patches that are harvested at a time. And if you go to Menards or Lowe's or Home Depot, their lumber, if you want to find out if it came from a certified forest, it should have a label that says well managed on it. So if you want to check your lumber next time you're there. Then we have fisheries. A fishery is an area with a large population of valuable ocean organisms. Overfishing is what happens when the fish are caught faster than they can breed and their population then decreases. 70% of the world's major fisheries are overfished right now, and that's causing a big problem in the world. To manage these fisheries, they have to set fishing limits. This is used to protect certain species. It limits the amount or the size of the fish caught. So usually they want to leave the small fish so they can grow up to reproduce, and they leave the larger fish that are actively reproducing so they can keep reproducing. So basically, they're catching the teenage fish. And they also monitor their fishing methods, so using nets with larger mesh to allow those younger fish to escape. And then poisoning and stunning have been outlawed. They used to actually catch fish for markets and stuff by poisoning and stunning, which stunning means they electrify the water and it stuns the fish. They go unconscious and they float to the top. They do still use that stunning for research projects, but they can't use it to catch large amounts of fish to sell. Then there's aquaculture. This is where fish is raised in artificial ponds or bays, like salmon, catfish, and shrimp. The problem with this is they often replace natural habitat because they have to dig out a big pond to keep them in. Maintaining them can cause pollution and disease in wild populations if they happen to get into the wild population. So one way to get around this is to find new resources, fish for new species that people aren't used to eating. And when I was a kid, we never had tilapia. So that's a pretty common fish that you can find right now. So right now we use about 9,000 different species for food, and 1/2 of the animal protein eaten by people in the world does come from fish. It's not quite so true for the United States. You'd have to be eating fish 3 to 4 days a week for that to happen. And that doesn't happen very much in the United States. But other countries, their main meat is fish. And this is just a graph that kind of shows you overfishing with the tuna population. In 1970, it was up over 240,000, and just in 20 years, it got down to a low of 40,000, a little over 40,000. That has been improving over time because we've been managing those fish populations. They've been limiting how many they can catch. All right, that's it for these notes. Don't forget to do your quack, and we'll see you in class. Bye.